Good afternoon. I'm Sylnovia Holt-Rebb, and I'm the Assistant Director with the City of Austin's Economic Development Department, and I'm so glad you're here today. Our Small Business Program division is hosting this event today for social entrepreneurship. Please make sure before you leave you take information about our program. We offer a lot of free, and I'll say that again, free services to small business and entrepreneurs in the city. We also have a low interest loan program. We have one-on-one counseling that we provide for free, and we have a business solutions center down at One Texas Center. So please, again, seek us out. A lot of our services are, again, free, and this was the vision of our previous city manager, Toby Futrell, and Rosie Khalifi at the time was the division manager. So again, I encourage you, if you have a thought, you have an idea, and you need some advice, definitely come see us, okay? And we also help creatives, not just traditional small business. So if you're a creative, a sculptor, a designer, you have an idea, again, please see us. I'd also like to thank Austin Community College for allowing us to use their wonderful facility today. And we are honored to have what we are calling today social entrepreneurship. What do you think of when you hear that term? Social entrepreneurship. Giving back, yes. That is what I think about. It's not just making your bottom line great, but making others great too as part of your business practice. So today we're very fortunate to have Mark Hand, who teaches social entrepreneurship at the LBJ School of Public Affairs at the University of Texas, and is a venture partner at UnLtd USA. He serves on the Commission on Immigrant Affairs for the City of Austin and as a volunteer ambassador for Forward.us. In his 4 years of early stage and impact investing, he has made and managed and supported over 35 ventures. After graduating from Vanderbilt University, Mark founded and led the expansion into Ecuador of Manna Project International, a volunteer-driven community development nonprofit. Mark also led fundraising efforts at an HIV/AIDS hospital in Botswana and served as a social worker for families of abused and neglected children in Louisiana. So you can see Mr. Hand has sought to use his talents for good all around the world, and we thank him. So at this time, I'm going to turn it over to our moderator, Mark Hand.
Thank you so much for having us. Thank you to the city. Thank you to the Department of Economic Development for having us today. I'm excited about today for a couple of reasons. Three specific reasons that you can see here. We've got three entrepreneurs here that I'm very excited for you all to hear about that are working on very different ventures, are struggling through some tough questions as well. And my hope is that we can have a conversation in which some of you who are either thinking about starting ventures or who are right in the thick of trying to run your own organization may be able to learn from some of the lessons that the panelists up here have learned from. So I'd like to start with a little bit of a story. When I was in Ecuador working for a small nonprofit called Manna Project, I'd been there for about a year and a half, and I was beginning to wonder what might come next for me. And I found myself frustrated by the lack of the ambition to scale in the nonprofit that I was working with and with a lot of the nonprofits that I was working around. And so I began to look around for who else was trying to solve some of these same social problems in a different way. And I discovered this tribe of people that called themselves social entrepreneurs that were trying to figure out how to use or manipulate or take advantage of markets to achieve some of those same social and environmental ends. And the more that I have learned about this group of entrepreneurs, the more that I've learned about this growing industry that is now something that the White House is paying attention to and that they discuss at the G8 and the World Economic Forum and has really become a major force in international financial markets. The more that I learn about it, the less that I feel like I know. And the more confused actually I am about who the players are and what the words mean and how they all fit together. And so what we've tried to do today is bring to you panelists that are actually at all ends of this spectrum of the blending of mission and market. We have one that's a nonprofit that's thinking through how to generate revenue with some of their programs. We have another who is building a business that specifically targets a particular consumer and attempts to have impact on that customer and that end user. And then we have another that's actually attempting to figure out, that's working on how to create impact for the producers of the goods and services that she sells. So I have a bunch of questions for them. I know that you all probably do as well. And I would like to encourage you all, if you can, and if you tweet, we have a hashtag set up for today that is SmallBizAustin. And if you'll tweet your questions at that hashtag, then I will make sure that they get asked as we go, and then we'll have more time as we go along for questions from the audience as well. The incentive to tweet is that Amy Looper, who we'll introduce here in a moment, has brought us a free B Corporation T-shirt, the meaning of which will become clear in the next hour and a half. And the person that gets retweeted the most will get a free T-shirt. It's pretty fun.
Yeah.
So without too much further ado, I've asked each of these panelists to share a little bit about how they started, how they came to do what they're doing today, so that they can tell us not only a little bit about their venture, but a little bit about their story as well. They're often surprising. They're often full of pitfalls and left turns and U-turns. But I think that each of these stories is unique, and hopefully you can find some lessons for your story as well. One thing that I would love to comment on before we get there is I think that it's unusual and remarkable that we have a mostly female panel up here today. My hope is that in this industry and in the world of startups generally, that will be a fact that will be totally unremarkable in the near future. That it'll be something that we won't even notice because it'll be so common. So without further ado, I'd like to start with Casey Smith from Cooking Up Cultures. Casey, tell us a little bit about how you came to launch Cooking Up Cultures and where you are today.
Sure. Well, Cooking Up Cultures wasn't my plan at all, actually. My husband and I lived in Santiago, Chile, after living in San Francisco, where we were just burnt out. And so we saved up for a year, moved to Santiago, and there I was going to start my clothing line, which I had been working towards. I majored in business and worked for large fashion corporations so that I could one day launch my own line. We were there, didn't speak any Spanish, which should have been a no-brainer for most people, but that didn't occur to us. We were like, oh, it's this huge international city, and we'll be fine. Of course, you need to speak Spanish. So we were crash course learning Spanish as we went through this, and meanwhile I'm still working on my clothing line, and found that the way I was able to connect with people was not by having perfect grammatical Spanish sentences, but was by using food. So our family tradition is to buy cookbooks wherever we travel. So I bought a Chilean cookbook, and because we were there for 6 months, I made dinner. So I had my dictionary out and my recipe book out and was translating those words, and I found that I remembered those words better than I did the ones in our that we were being tutored in, and was able to use that as a sort of launching point to have really broken, like terrible grammatical sentences actually, but conversations with people we saw every day, our neighbors, the corner grocer that we went to every day, the postman, and finally didn't feel so isolated, which was definitely the experience we were having. So anyway, come back to the U.S. and I get the clothing line started. We get into stores, and the first time I saw clothing on the store on the rack, I thought I was going to have this feeling of like, yes, I did it finally. But actually, the feeling was, wow, that was a lot of work, and that was not much fun. So I shelved that and decided I'm not going to pursue this any further. Meanwhile, this whole experience of having felt isolated while we were in Santiago because of our own language barrier, and this concept of cooking, which I really love cooking, and I thought, you know what? I bet that there are people in Austin that are just as excited to be here as I was to be in Santiago, but having these same language barriers. And I wonder if maybe cooking up English could be something that would be interesting to people. So I happened to live next door to an ESL instructor, and we talked back and forth about this, and we decided this would be a really good idea to just try it out and work with adults who are learning English as a second language, but using food as the tool to do that. So we started in 2010, and now we teach Spanish, French, Chinese, and we'll be launching Arabic in January, and the whole purpose is to really bridge the cultural barriers that exist in our communities so that the whole city feels like your city, not just a pocket of it, but you feel like you really belong everywhere. So, and using food, the most fundamental human function, as a way to do that. So,
thanks, Casey. Jen, how did you end up starting Person Clutch?
Well, for a very calculated person such as myself, I feel like I kind of stumbled into social entrepreneur endeavor as well. So I don't even know where to start. I feel like it's something that was like always kind of in me, but I didn't really know what it was going to look like. I always knew I wanted to connect needs with resources, and tried a bunch of other ways to do that, such as teaching high school chemistry at a bilingual school in Honduras, where I didn't work with a single poor person, whatever a poor person. From that to getting a master's in business, thinking maybe business would be a better way to really connect needs and resources, to eventually moving to Austin and started working at a nonprofit where we were working with the homeless and the formerly homeless to help create sustainable jobs by gardening in volunteers' backyards and then selling our produce at the farmers market. But then also realizing that to try to solve this need of a sustainable job and sustainable food, we were having to teach people something that maybe they didn't care about at all. And so kind of learned a lot about what does it look like to find maybe more specific needs and then connect them with more specific resources. So at the time when I was trying to figure that out, and I was tutoring math and science on the side, trying to figure out ways to make those connections, I talked to one of my friends from grad school who had just moved to India, and she would tell me the stories of the women they were working with, who already had the skill set to do weaving of cotton and block printing. And so they already had the skill set, they just needed to kind of have that connection, and it was the connecting piece is what was missing. And I kind of realized, like, that's what I was really excited about, like, not necessarily teaching a whole new skill set, but being that connector. So I asked my friend how I could help, and she sent me a box of handbags. I didn't know what a boutique was at the time. I didn't know what e-commerce was at the time. I just kind of frantically Googled and read every article I could find on how to sell items online. And now I have an online boutique, which is kind of ironic, as you're like trying intentionally to get into fashion, and I don't know that I carried a handbag before I started Person Clutch. So part of our mission is to help create sustainable jobs for artisan groups, specifically in developing countries, specifically with limited opportunities. And then the other kind of part of that is kind of our audience of who we sell our items to, so that maybe someone buys a bag that's beautifully curated and maybe not something that they would even know was made in a developing country, and then they can start asking the questions of how the things that they're buying are being made and how they're maybe connected to the people that produce the products that they make. So it's a little bit.
Thanks, Jen. And I'm going to ask Amy to share her story as well. And then after that, now that you all know who's in front of you, I actually would like to right off the bat hear what some of your questions might be for some of these folks. I've got my own. We'll get to a couple of those. But I'd love to hear a little bit about who's in the room and what it is that you'd hope to learn in the next hour or so.
That's what I was hoping. If we could just take a quick show of hands, who is wanting to start a business, has started a business, or, because I'm going to tailor my story because I'm representing the AARP side of this, so I have a long story, so you don't want to hear all of it. I just want to get to the heart of it, of what you guys need. So is that okay?
Sure, yeah, please.
Yeah, so just by a show of hands, who's thinking about starting a company? Oh, great. So, and who has started a company and they're wanting to kind of, yeah, perfect. And the rest of you are just here because there's free cookies, I suppose, back there. Sounds good. Well, that's good. You guys are the perfect crowd because you're really here to hear the knowledge that all of us have to share here. I am not a world traveler. I didn't get out of Houston, Texas for like ever. So I'm like in awe of these young women. And thank you for acknowledging women in business because, like I said, the hair color I have on my hair and the wrinkles that I have is because my glass ceiling was like down here. But now these beautiful young women, are really the sky is the limit for all of us. And that's in part to you too. I really appreciate you, Mark, and how you acknowledge that for us. So my story is I was hung on the playground by a bully, by the jump rope. He wove a noose and a jump rope, threw it around my neck because I was the lowest on the food chain. I was a child that repeated first and third grade, so I was picked on. And I don't know if that has to do with the work that I'm doing now for children because I got through it and just really never gave it a thought until we were into our second business, and our PR person came in and said, we need a story. We need a story. And we were just like, what's the story? What's the story? And finally I said, oh, well, I was hung on the playground. Would that be helpful? She nearly passed out because she said, for 2 years you haven't told me this. But that's kind of jumping forward and back and forth. I'm not very linear. But I think when I first realized that I could have my own business, so a lot of you are thinking about it, a lot of you are in it. I'm not a very formal person, but I think you'll appreciate this, and you can edit it out. But I refer frequently when I mentor people that when you're thinking about this or you've just gotten into it, it's more about entrepreneuring, right? Because it can get really deep fast. And so you have to figure out, do you have the stamina, to wade through it all? And I'm glad you're laughing because it's really true. If you've started, everybody's shaking their head. You've pivoted. We've all pivoted, and that's a pretty popular term, but I would imagine that everybody in here that's thought that they started out with their idea was going to be one way, and I was the same. So kind of fast forward, my background is I've got a advertising and marketing design firm. So my dream was to work for Ogilvy and Mather, one of the largest ad agencies in the country. That's as far as it went for me. And then I got a job in Nashville, Tennessee, and had reached my peak. I hit my glass ceiling. I couldn't be an art director even back in those days. And so a creative director on my team said, Amy, you've got the it factor. You're going to have your own business. And I was like, what? I didn't see that for myself. Moved back to Houston in 1982 and couldn't get a job because the oil boom had busted. So then, in order to eat, I had to start hustling. So I accidentally became an entrepreneur, really just to be able to eat, right? How many of you are looking at that as well, right? So, we all our journey takes us different places, but that's how I got started. I had a design firm, leveraged that, and then early on I found out when technology was just kind of starting in 1995 when the World Wide Web, you guys remember that, the World Wide Web? So I thought, this is kind of cool. This may be something for me to do. And so fast forward, my business partner and I saw an opportunity to start an internet consulting firm. And we were the first to put creative, which was all of our side, with technology. And now it's ubiquitous. Everybody's doing it everywhere. And in short of 3 years, we were Houston's fastest growing private company, and we grew over 8,000% in less than 3 months. And that's why I wanted to take that ride, was because I could learn from my partners. From then on, we went public in 3 years. And so I found the opportunity to have a little nest egg. And I wanted to use technology at the point where it helped human need, because we were sort of doing that anyway, but it was for what I do affectionately call as my prostitution days. We were talking about that earlier. That company was formed not to do good. It was formed to straight up make money. And that was uncomfortable for me because it wasn't my personal mission. And that's what's important, I think, for you guys. You'll be successful if you map your personal mission to what you want to do. Because those days that it's going to get hard, that's what you're going to have to draw on, is that personal mission. But to kind of wrap up, we'd had a previous client that told us about the field of character education. And I, being from Texas, just my first words were, yes, sir, and no, ma'am. I didn't, because that was the character education in my home. And I'm like, this is interesting. We have to actually teach our children character ed. And so we just asked the question, could we solve that? Could we help kids self-solve their problems using the technology that they love? And that's what brings us to what we're doing today, is we're using a mobile platform. It's an SMS, and right now it's in the form of the birds and bees, and kids text in their sex ed questions, and our health educators answer them.
Great, thanks, Amy.
That's me. Yeah, thanks.
Appreciate it.
Yeah.
So let me hear just right off the bat, now that you guys have a sense of who you're hearing from, what kind of questions did you come with? What sort of questions brought you here today? Maybe start from the, go ahead, yeah. Okay, go ahead.
Jen.
Let's take one more. Maybe folks in the back. Anybody back there? Go ahead.
a good question. That's real good.
Great. Jen, what you want to start with the middle question? Absolutely.
Yeah, so the question was, how do we connect with the different artisan groups who make the products that we sell? And then also, how do we kind of manage the time factor in terms of production, which is a great question and one that I'm still figuring out. So some of our artisan groups we find, because a friend of mine lives in India and has those direct connections, I intentionally chose to be a boutique and not to just sell their items and not to just be their online store, because that's what I could have kind of chosen in the beginning. It was kind of a random decision. I didn't have a really great reason at the time. It's just kind of that next step that you take, and now realizing that it had a huge impact on the business that I'm running now. Some of the groups we work with is a friend who maybe traveled through Cambodia and found a really great group. Some are fair trade certified wholesalers that have kind of the right credentials, although those can be really expensive, so we don't just work with those types of groups. Some are from my connections from when I lived in Central America. So it's pretty kind of organic, and we intentionally try to work with both kind of the larger organizations that I place one order in, right now for the spring, and they deliver it the day they say they are from a warehouse maybe in Colorado, because they've really kind of grown and already expanded. So we kind of work with those groups as well as with the 3 or 4 women who are maybe working together to make things that can make 8 items at a time, and they ship it to us when they're done, and makes it really tough. Our website is oftentimes really empty because of that, and we're really intentional about trying to curate a really specific product, so it's not, I'm buying this because it's fair trade, it's, this is a really beautiful item, and so we're kind of going for a different market in terms of the fair trade world. So, I mean, even currently, there's some shipment that's stuck somewhere that I have 8 pre-orders, and I promised they would come before Christmas, and I don't know what I should have done differently. I don't know what I can do to make it better, and some customers totally understand that, and some customers don't have any clue kind of why we're doing what we're doing. So it's a constant challenge. And then actually this year, for the first time, I'm going to be going to New York Now, which is a buyer's conference, and they're starting to have kind of a specific handmade artisan area as kind of the fair trade movement grows, which I'm super excited about. So I can go to a conference and meet with a lot of these specific artisan groups and see the products and see their timelines, so that I can have this flow chart of, I can order these ahead of time, and these, I can get only within, a certain amount of time. So it's a lot of juggling, but does that answer your question?
Amy, I'm gonna see if I can lump these 2 questions about structure and money making together. So we had two questions. The first was, how do I think about through what kind of business structure I ought to have? And this is not a straightforward question, so I'm glad you asked it. And then the second is, can you actually make money doing this stuff? Is there any way to make money while you're trying to do good?
Great, thanks. Excuse me. I asked a friend who's an attorney that focuses on impact businesses to be here today, but I was looking for her because I was like, oh my God, that's a perfect question for Kristen. So if anybody has those questions, just afterwards come up and see me, and I'll forward those to Kristen, because that's what her area of law expertise is. And you really want somebody that has this as an expertise, because it's too important. So that would be my layperson answer. Now, I'll just talk real quickly. I brought, the Benefit Corporation and B Corp. If you've been reading and hearing about them, we are Texas's first B Corp, and there are some benefits there that can help you with some structure, but really the best thing to do is to get legal advice specifically on that. But kind of focus me back around on the question. So it was about legal.
So the first was maybe some of the options around legal structure, right. And maybe you can talk a little bit about how B Corps fit into that.
Yeah. Well, I think really Casey can talk about a hybrid organization, because I think that this, not knowing exactly what the products are, and it sounds like you have several that maybe can sort of group together. There may be some hybrid opportunities. So kind of in the hierarchy, you have nonprofits, you have for-profits. And this whole industry of impact or social innovation and social entrepreneurship has now opened up these tracks where you can in B Corp's case, just to make it a real quick analogy for a B Corp is similar to like a good housekeeping seal for businesses. The reason why we went this route was for our business when we were talking to high net wealth individuals to be angels for our company. They were a little nervous because they didn't have a structure to vet us. So this can get really deep, but it's a really good question. You could do just a whole session on this, but kind of focusing myself back in. It was a vehicle for us that could give us credibility, that we could be held accountable. So when you're looking at putting your business structures together, there's not only how you want to put the business of the business structure together, but if you're an impact company and you're environmental or social, in B Corp's case, that's important because you yourself already are saying we're going to hold ourselves accountable, like you're going to do free trade and you're going to, everything, all the I's are dotted and the T's are crossed. So that's a high level of a really deep subject that could have several hours on it.
I'm going to come to Casey in a second, but Amy, can you talk about some of the B Corps that have made some money?
Yeah,
some
Etsy.
of the B Corps that have been successful?
Etsy is a big one. So Etsy is a B Corp, and I think you can correct me, Beth, maybe in the question and answer a little bit later, but they are really important because they just bought out. They had an exit?
Just went public.
Just got bought out. So in their business process, they were a B Corp. So the investors, that was a little new to them. And sometimes, investors are like, well, what is this kind of crazy, weird stuff that you're doing, But they were able to get over that hump with their investors because the investors realized, it's a way to hold them accountable. Ben & Jerry's is another one. Ben & Jerry's is actually the really famous story. You guys all know about Ben & Jerry's ice cream. It's all sourced. Everything's politically correct. And then they had a hostile takeover with their shareholders, and they came in, just like my previous job, and just all they were thinking about really was making money. If Ben & Jerry's had been a B corporation at that point, what B Corps do, and in this case, you make a commitment to people, profit, and planet. So instead of just focusing on profits, they say, hey, you can't take us over like that because we've got all of our other stakeholders that are important to us. So it's kind of a crash course of it's a little bumpy right now, I get that, but you can go to the websites and get a lot of information, and there's big networks here that you can get involved in to answer. Does that help answer the question?
It helps. And Casey, you've had to ask some of these questions about what fits in a nonprofit, what fits in a for-profit. Can you talk a little bit about how you're thinking about that and why some of the decisions you're making right now?
Yes. So Cooking Up Cultures is a hybrid entity, and we have a 501c3, which is how we formed in the beginning, was under the umbrella of another 501c3 organization. We now have our own 501c3 status. But as we were thinking about our programming and how we can become sustainable so that we don't spend all of our hours writing grants and soliciting for money, that we're actually doing the service that we want to do, what could we do that could make us more sustainable while also delivering our products and services and achieving our mission? And so we did a lot of research, and Mark's one of my mentors actually through UnLtd USA, but we've did a lot of research in trying to understand what those structures could be. And so we looked at B Corp but we're from Texas, and we want a Texas group. So we're formed as a 501c3 and an LLC, and one of the owners in our LLC is our 501c3. So we've created this legal tie so that our nonprofit will receive funding from the benefactor, which is the LLC, at some point. It's not making money yet. The product's not even launched actually in the LLC, which is online lessons. So that's how we're thinking about it in terms of the 501c3. What could we get funded if we were to continue to solicit for dollars? And we can, from what we've learned working with nonprofit funders and investors, is that if we're able to, it's all about the impact. So are you serving a certain number of people? Are you meeting this particular need in a way that is not able to be achieved through the marketplace generally? So what we're doing under our 501c3 is all of our in-person programming, things that we can deliver. So our classes, our parent engagement classes with AISD, those are actual people we see face-to-face that we're doing Cooking Up English and Cooking Up Spanish and French and Arabic with. And then our online lessons would be open to the general public, and that's in development. So I don't know if that answers the question, but
watch this space.
Yeah.
So I think as I work with entrepreneurs here, some of the things that I ask them about and helping them think through this question of structure is what is your motivation? Sort of back to Amy's question. And if your primary motivation is to make a living, put food on the table, then it's probably the case that a for-profit structure makes the most sense. If you are really driven by a particular type of social and environmental impact that you'd like to have, then it's possible that a nonprofit makes sense. To Casey's point, sort of who will fund what is a big question. And so if you set up as an LLC, if you set up with a simple for-profit structure, it's actually pretty easy to convert to a 501c3 later. It's very difficult to go the other way. And so if you just what you want to do is just get started and get moving, then setting up an LLC is a pretty simple first step, so that you can get moving before you have that question answered fully for the lifetime of your organization.
It's a lower cost investment too, actually.
Sure, yeah. So it's easy to go from an LLC to a 501c3 because the idea is that you're taking, in an LLC, you're taking the resources that belong to an individual or to a for-profit company, and you're, through the IRS, you're basically granting them to the public good. But once resources have been put in the public, in the public benefit, it's really difficult to take them back out. So it's hard to dissolve a 501c3 and actually pull any resources out of that entity. It's possible in ways that I don't understand because I'm not a lawyer,
Right.
But it's difficult.
Can I tag just real quickly onto what you're saying, because this is probably on everybody's mind, but I just jotted a few notes, and you might be able to fill in a little bit better. But I started thinking of one way you might get leverage. I'm always looking for leverage. Leverage, all of us know, will get you there quicker. So one of the ways that you can leverage, and I thought it was really great how you talked about how your partner is the nonprofit, right? So we have a public-private partnership, which means that our company is working with a nonprofit in North Carolina, and they're the health educators that answer our questions. So that gave us leverage. We didn't have to go out and do that, but we found a partner that was a nonprofit, and we could work together. So look at the points in your business or your service and what you're doing. Could there be some partnerships with other people where you could leverage that? Because now, and again, I'm not an attorney, but now there are some different laws in terms of how nonprofit entities can make, I'm not going to say profits, but they can have a revenue stream. And that's how our relationship with this small nonprofit in North Carolina worked. So that helps save you money, it gives you leverage, plus it gives you an opportunity to figure out, is this going to work? And, you know, as much as you can mitigate your risk about the idea that you have that's going on is what you want to do. So leverage gets you there quicker, and the quicker you can figure out if you're going to have a stumbling block or the market's not right or something that you miss, because I guarantee you're going to miss something. And that's where your greatest lessons are going to come from. But then public-related investments, or program-related investments, PRI.
Let's pause on that, because
okay.
that's a pretty specific instance.
Okay,
So to see if this is something that people have questions about.
Perfect.
For now, I want to take a couple more questions. We've got a couple of questions coming in on Twitter, which we'll get to here in a second. I have one question, which is I would love to hear from each of you what you're learning right now. And the second half of this is from among the networks of the folks that are in this room, if you could meet somebody, if you could have their help introducing you to somebody that would help push your business or your organization forward, who would that be, or what type of person would that be? So what are you wrestling with? What are you learning right now? And then where could you use some help from folks in the audience? I want to get started?
I'll start.
Go ahead.
So as I mentioned, this product that we're working on, online lessons, so you can experience a Cooking Up Cultures class in your own home, in your own kitchen, as you're going through the lesson, learning the language and the recipe. We have a sort of a baseline of team that is helping us with the web development, but anybody else who is involved in ed tech would certainly be a helpful resource. Just to compare notes or learn best practices would certainly be helpful for us. Investors, of course. That's the same for all of us.
Always.
One of the things I've been learning, I'm reading a book called An Ever Diverse Pair by Owen Barfield. I don't even know that it's that great of a book. It's like taking me a while to get through, but he talks about, he's a lawyer, and basically there are two separate characters, but it's the same person. And he talks about separating who you are as a person and then separating who you are as like a business person. I feel like that's been something that's been really helpful in growing Person Clutch, is to be able to be as tenacious as possible to separate out, this is my business and this is me, in kind of a really healthy way, while not losing that motivation of why I'm doing what I'm doing. So that's been a good read for me. Needs? Again, it's hard. That's a really great question. I think if I can be as specific as possible, we need connections in the real estate, like commercial real estate world, that of people who are open to like really creative collaborations, like, oh, you have a new space and you don't have any tenants yet. Like, let us come in for a week and have like crazy fun events with like all of the fair trade, social, fashion entrepreneurs in Austin. It's really hard to find that who aren't saying no, stay for 10 years, and that just doesn't really fit in with our kind of online focus. So any sort of creative real estate
Perfect. Parents, children, and educators, because right now we've got a wireframe, which is basically it's like black and white, just pictures on paper with a mobile app that we're launching, and you can just look at it on my phone and you can give me feedback. And so one of the interesting things is that we're pitching an investor in January. We're going to go through their investment pitch, and one of their requirements is to have 50 customer discovery questionnaires answered, right? And all of us should be, I do customer discovery all the time, and a point in cases when I got my flu shot in September, I talked to the pharmacist, right? So there you go. Everybody, you need to talk to everybody because they're going to tell you something that you don't know. So that's my need. Come tell me something I don't know. Yeah,
very good. Thanks. Yeah. So a couple of questions from Twitter from Calder. The first one is social entrepreneurship limited to doing good for people, or can it include other organisms in the community? Have you guys seen folks, social enterprises working not with people? I suppose so. I think that's what we mean. Maybe this is an environmental question as well.
Compost peddlers comes to mind. Are y'all familiar with compost peddlers?
Can you tell me about compost peddlers, Jen?
Yeah, I think. It's been a little while since I've met with Dustin, but basically I think the concept is that you can leave your compostable item, I don't know that that's a word, but your compostable items for someone to come and pick up, and they pick it up only on bikes, and then they kind of do the whole composting process for you, and you can either exchange it for points that could get you coffee at a coffee shop if you're maybe in an apartment or don't garden and don't really have a need for compost, or you can kind of exchange it for the like already composted compost.
Pretty good. Casey, you nodded your head as well.
Yeah, I was thinking of a group called Eddy Bags, I think is what they're called, and they are. I don't know exactly how to explain. It's very scientific, but they take composted products or things that would normally go in the trash that are organic, and they press it into like a reusable bag, which sounds crazy, but and then I think you can eat it. Oh, wow. For vitamins. I think that's something like that.
It's true.
Anyway, but it's kind of cool. So, yes, all kinds of organisms, or is that what the question was?
I think so. I think so. We can have follow-up questions as well. Maybe there are other organisms that I don't know about yet that we need to have an impact on. And then the second question from Calder was, is there a network for socially conscious businesses to keep this conversation going and to cross-promote? Where can I go to learn more? So where would you all point folks that are in the audience that would like to learn more, would like to get involved?
I'm happy to share. If you go to SWAN, S-W-A-N, it stands for, in case I give the wrong URL, just Google Southwest Angel Network, and they have a tab on their website, and they have a really good list of about 15 places that are varying places, a wide range of places that are supporting impact entrepreneurs. There are probably some various meetups. I just haven't pinged them. You guys might know some of them. We're talking about doing some. There's another impact fund that I'm working with, and they can do a lot. I don't know. I know you guys do too. You guys do a lot of stuff at UnLtd. But some of the accelerators, if you look up some of the incubators and accelerators, like Tech Ranch has an area of emphasis in supporting and nurturing impact companies. Definitely UnLtd. You guys do. But SWAN has the best list I've seen. And then, if you want to just ping me, I'm happy to share, when we stumble on stuff.
Would you guys point out anything else? Go ahead, Casey.
Well, I would say, too, like, what's kind of fun about the social entrepreneurship space is that, at least what I've experienced with UnLtd and other founders in UnLtd, is that, my LinkedIn is your LinkedIn kind of experience. Like, it's very much this open, like, yeah, let me help you. I know so-and-so, and I'll connect you. And I don't know if that's just because we're in Austin and it's a great city to be in, or if it's because it's the social entrepreneurship space. I'm not sure. But Yeah, certainly I'm happy to share my contacts too and how we can help each other grow because it's good for our city, right?
It is.
So there
It is.
a couple other resources I'd point you guys to. We haven't found a home for this yet, but a few weeks ago I posted something on Facebook that had a list of 12 events in the social innovation world. So if you look me up on Facebook, it's a publicly available post. And if you can imagine a better home for that information, please let us know. And then the second is there's a group in town called Austin Food Shed Investors, and for a while they had a tremendous list of all of the people that were doing anything in town. And then if you search for Austin Social Enterprise and then the word KUMU, K-U-M-U, it's a map that we've built to try to identify who's who and who's connected to who. And if you can't find that, send me a tweet and I'll respond to you as well. It's K-U-M-U. Mm-hmm.
I would just add the introvert's answer to that would be to find someone who's doing something interesting and have a Skype conversation with them. And most people, I feel like, are pretty open within the social enterprise world, especially if you have something you can offer them as well. If it's feedback on a product, if it's buying you coffee, whatever that is, I think showing that you're not just there to take their time or to take their
Mm-hmm. One new piece of infrastructure in town is the Impact Hub. So there's a co-working space called VUCA that is in the process of becoming an Impact Hub, which is a sort of group of co-working spaces around the world that share resources and send people back and forth. So we'll be fortunate to have that in town officially when it opens. I think in January is when they're formally announcing. It's called the Impact Hub, and if you look for VUCA, V-U-K-A, then you'll find it. I'd like to take another round of questions from the audience, and please don't be shy about talking about what you're working on to add context to your questions. So if you want to tell us just 15 seconds about the business that you're working on and the question that you have, then we can tailor some of our responses. So I have one question here.
Thank you. The first question is from a B corporate standpoint, I guess the criteria. So I've got a corporation, small, just brand new, very excited about it. It's an online women's clothing exchange company. But the whole premise was from an environmental planet impact, minimize wasteful clothes being thrown in our landfills, which are does tons of billions a year. It's shameful. So that's kind of how we morphed into what we're doing. And I've read about B corporations and studied it, but we are right now a C corporation. And we're just kind of, my business partner, I just kind of perusing about, because we have such a dire want and desire to have the social impact and environmental impact. Should we change to a B corporation? But we haven't gone there yet. But back to, I guess it was Chris's point about really from a profitable point of view, is there a minimum profit that you need to make to deem you a B corporation? Okay, so it's whatever percent you make, you give back, or how does that work?
Yeah.
So Amy, do you want to talk just a little bit about this, and then I'll fill in?
Yeah, sure. You're asking really good questions, and that's why getting an attorney to help you at the very beginning. Yeah, get her. She'll really help you out. Let's see, because there were several things that were sort of spun inside that, so help me stay really tightly focused for you. There is a free assessment on B Corp site or B Lab. What's the link, Beth? bcorporation.net, thank you. And it's a free assessment. You can take it and you can sort of see where you land. There's no minimum that you have to, there's no money tied to it. It's really just when you get into that process with B Corp, it's that you have a seal of approval and you've passed the assessment and you get a number, and it just starts to help you let the public know that I'm walking the talk with what I'm doing. It's not for everybody, but it's just like a good housekeeping seal is the layperson for it. Now, being a B corporation, which is what you opened up, Texas doesn't have that legislature, but that is what B Lab is trying to do. Eventually, they want to prevent those things that happen to like Ben and Jerry. So there is a company structure that in, I think, about 12 states that 31, thank you. Beth is actually our B Corp, yeah, somewhere between 12 and 31. 31, and yeah, she's the one that runs all of that. So there are states that have legislation. We're incorporated in Delaware. Delaware is one of those states, and the way that our company is in its life cycle, we have by 2017 to become a B corporation, benefit corporation. So for us, it makes sense. It might not, for you, but they have a really good network. Yeah.
So it sounds like
So, yeah.
it sounds like we may have a B Corp specific discussion after.
Yeah, yeah.
Which is good. Which
Yeah,
is
you
good.
guys may
There's-
want to do a whole
there's
session on that. Yeah.
Curiosity about that. Let's take a couple more questions, and then for those of you guys who slipped in afterwards, if you tweeted us with the hashtag #SmallBizAustin, we'll pick those up as well. Go ahead.
So I could help you with that. we should talk. Actually, this purse is from Colombia. So I'm sure that a lot of people are in the same boat, and when you start a company, you tend to work on your own for a while, and then, if you're lucky, maybe you'll pick up a partner. And so I'm sort of in that boat to where I'm working alone, and something that I really need is mentorship, because I'm afraid that my friends and family are kind of tired of me emailing them 10 times a day with, what do you think about this color combination? Or how do you think I should approach this magazine with this request or whatever? And so something that I really find is a big need for me right now is mentorship. How do you find mentors? How is it structured? I know some people have something that's kind of like an advisory board, and I'm thinking about maybe doing something like that, because I'm like desperate to sort of talk to, even like people, if you guys want to be my mentor,
Sure.
I'm on the lookout.
Yeah.
I'm 3 years deep into this. I actually live in Colombia, South America, and I work with artisans. We do ceramics. We just launched purses. I work with some women who do linens in Bogota. So that's sort of my background. But anyways, yeah, mentorship. How do you find mentors, keep mentors? How does that sort of function, and how does it work
Thanks.
for you guys?
Let's take a couple more, and then we'll do them all at once. Any other immediate questions? I know there got to be a couple. I think we haven't heard any from this section yet. Back.
I have a quick question.
Okay, very good.
I'm doing university level research, and I'm trying to find some sites to study that specifically are incubators for social entrepreneurship for community development and addressing social ills. So if any of you have any suggestions of sites across the country, I'd be open to hearing about that.
Great. And then one more question that came in on Twitter is, should your personal mission statement be a part of your business?
Oh, well, in our case, it's one and the same. Our passion is the same, and at the highest level, it is to have healthy, thriving children everywhere. So there you can go to websites and they can help you kind of structure that, because you kind of have your mission and then your vision and your goals and how that all breaks down. But our passion is using technology to help children thrive, and that's just as simple as it is, and it permeates. We're like little bees in a beehive, and all the honey that comes out, it's like, are we helping kids? So that's how we do it. So it doesn't have to be different, but I think if it's the same, it's really beneficial. I think you guys could speak to that really well.
Then, Jen, in terms of the book that you read, it talked a little bit about the separation between those two things. Can you share what you're learning about that?
Yeah, for sure. I think when your business is you, talking about like starting off small, everything that goes well feels amazing, and everything that goes poorly, like it's tough to get out of bed the next day. I mean, you just see those like really high highs and lows. So I think any way that you can separate that. In terms of mission statement, I think it helps you know what your business is really about. So like our business is always going to be focusing on artisans in developing countries with limited resources. So if someone comes up to me and says, hey, we've got these gorgeous bags that are handmade out of Detroit, I can say, not a developing country. Like, yes, there's a lot of need. That doesn't fit my business. Thank you, not a good fit. Whereas my personal statement is going to be a bit more broad. I think, in general, I want to help other people, or, just more general, and I'm not necessarily looking to make personal decisions in the same way. So I think it is it's specifically I don't know, more intentionally that like filter with which I can choose like, yes, my business is about this, or no, it's not.
That's a good point.
Yeah, it's called An Ever Diverse Pair. It's a really weird book. I really can't believe I'm talking about it. But yeah, An Ever Diverse Pair by Owen Bartfield. He's a contemporary of Tolkien.
So I'll jump in on the research question really quickly, just because it's part of what I do. One of the sources that I've found that's most helpful for that is actually a company here in town called Enable Impact. It's enableimpact.com. And the story here is that there's an entrepreneur here in town named Philip Berber, who was a successful tech entrepreneur who made $500 million selling a company to Schwab. And at some point, he went to the Unreasonable Institute in Colorado and for a couple of days listened to entrepreneurs talking about how they couldn't find investors. And then the next couple of days listened to investors talking about how they couldn't find any entrepreneurs and couldn't find any deals to make. And so he came up with this concept of a platform that would connect them. And Enable Impact is that platform. He calls it a match.com for social entrepreneurs. Mm. And what's helpful about it is that actually underneath the platform is a pretty extensive registry of all of the impact investors that the Unreasonable Institute, which is a leader in this space, had encountered over the course of 4 or 5 years, and then some of the support organizations that are there. So and then locally on the Austin Food Shed Investors website, you'll see some of that. There are a handful of those in town. Specifically on community development and urban ventures, there's one in San Francisco called TUMML, TUMML, and they're focused on entrepreneurial solutions to urban problems. Particularly interesting, I think.
Mark, may I make
of course.
Back on network and mentoring? That's really great that you're thinking about me, and these two would just be wonderful mentors for you because you're in the same area. The second way that's a real good way to find mentors and to find a space is to go to some of the, I don't know, do you guys still have happy hours? We went to
the Impact Hub does.
Yeah, so the Impact Hub, if you can look and find happy hours, because those are open to the public. It's open for anybody. Again, because I mentor and do things with Tech Ranch. Tech Ranch has that's their whole pioneer theme, so they have campfires. And I think it's like, you'll just have to Google those sites. But that's a great place to go to those environments, and you can meet people, that you can just ask. And that was really brilliant for you to step up and ask. You just have to ask, what you want. So, yeah, that's good.
So mentors are key. You need to get mentors for sure. I would say that going to the happy hours is certainly one way to get them, but asking people who are not necessarily in your business, but who are doing something maybe it's totally unrelated, like medical, for example, like something that's completely different than what you're doing. They could be great mentors because they'll provide you a perspective that you might be able to apply to your own business structures and operations, and that's what I have found has been really helpful. So I have an attorney that's a mentor. We're not in the legal field at all. Like, that's not anything we're worried about, really, but his guidance has just been there on the, I send him emails of like, hey, we're on this. Is this a nut you'd be willing to crack? And so then we'll sit and meet for coffee. And it's just a matter of mentorship in terms of the business, but also how helping you as the entrepreneur through those tough obstacles. And, Mark is also one of my mentors, as I mentioned earlier, but these are the kinds of conversations we have too. I mean, he's in impact investing, and that's not what we're focused on at all, but so talking about how they're working their business and how that might apply to ours too has been really helpful. But doing what you're doing is asking. That's what you've got to do, and I think it's most helpful to find them through networks that you're already connected to.
And there's also, you can have informal mentors or formal mentors and figuring out what's a better fit for you. I know for me, when I have formal mentors, I end up not having the right question for the right mentor that I'm meeting, and it works better for me to know if I have a question about how I'm managing people, I know I go to Wendy Soderquist. If I have a question about this, like, I know who is in that network that I can always reach out to, and then kind of trying to keep those relationships going at all times. And then a really specific answer to your question is that I offer an apprenticeship twice a year where we kind of talk through specifically how to run a social business, specifically online, specifically within the fair trade world. So we do that twice a year, and applications are just kind of rolling. So if you go to the personclutch.com website, you can learn a little bit more about that too.
That's fantastic.
Okay, one more immediate question here from Yolanda.
And so I work with that program SCORE. I go there and I talk to a lot of retirement people that been in the business before and can mentor you from the beginning to end. And I found that tremendous amount of help. And it does work to have someone that's out of your field to really ask questions for us. So definitely look them up. It's a free service. It's just signing up for it. And you can find one in your neighbor closer to where you
What was that called again?
SCORE.
SCORE. That's nice. That's a good share.
Great thing. Enjoy it.
So I've got a question for the panelists about what you would like to see in Austin that would further support ventures like yours. Before we get there, I also want to throw out to you guys that around this space, around the world of social entrepreneurship, there's a lot of talk, there's a lot of hype, there's a lot of people that say a lot of awesome things, and I want to make sure that there's actually space here that if you guys have questions that are critical or are a little bit skeptical, that you feel like you can ask those here. I think actually there are a lot of folks that are doing really good work, and that if we ask hard questions, that it'll make that work even stronger. So if there's somebody in the back that's like, I'm not really sure what this is all about, please feel free to raise your hand and ask that question too. So for now, as you guys look at, in the last maybe 3 years, there's been a sort of explosion of interest in these kinds of ventures in Austin. And there are a lot of different groups that are doing a lot of different work. The city has thrown its reverse pitch and is hosting us here today. What would you hope to see different actors contributing? How would you like to see this ecosystem coming together? What do you think would be really helpful to entrepreneurs like you?
I'll go first. I think, again, on the mentorship piece of it. So we've got a really interesting demographic in Austin. We've got a lot of experienced adults who have run really large corporations and small and medium-sized businesses that have been successful. And I would love to see them, as they're maybe transitioning out of their full-time work in those companies, I would love to see them offer their wisdom up to social entrepreneurs. So yes, I would love to see more of that network happening.
I think it could be really interesting to see what it would look like to have a space where there's freedom to fail and there's freedom to ask for input around that failure, as well as just kind of opening the conversation to even just asking what are your specific needs, to be able to have that kind of community, as opposed to what ends up being is I'm excited about all the good work we're doing, so let's talk about that, which is great and fantastic and should absolutely be celebrated, but it could be interesting to see what it would look like to have a safe space to really talk about what failures look like and how to ask for help.
If anybody has done improv comedy, have you ever seen the failure bow, right? That's what we need, the failure bow organization or something. That'd be great.
We already have a name. I love it.
It's even better. Well, I think things like the competition just last night with the reverse, however, I think that was brilliant because it brought in a problem just really locally. For me, I see it as seed and early stage funding. That prior to the economy blowing up, I don't know if you're familiar with the term, but drive-by angels, it's kind of became a big thing out in Silicon Valley. These billionaires would just sort of drive by and give, tech kids $50,000 and, go for it. We need to see that in this space, and the economy really blew that up. And now I think slowly this is an outgrowth of coming out of the sort of dark space of the economy blowing up. So I'd like to see, the structure around it, because there's got to be structure. All of us should be held accountable. But B Corp, for example, is a good example. They are doing that, but they're doing it on late-stage companies, so like Etsy and Patagonia and all those, late-stage companies. Well, there's a lot of us that are early-stage and seed that that's where it needs to really pick up, I think.
Very good. We've got to take some more questions here in a moment, but I'm paying attention on Twitter, and there's not a clear winner except for Small Biz Austin itself, which has been retweeted a couple of times. And I'm actually not sure if that's legal, so you should probably nudge the person next to you and get them to retweet whatever you just tweeted, so we don't have to leave this shirt on the table here when we go. Do we have any other questions from the audience right now for any of our panelists? I've got one in a minute.
You got one in the back.
Let's hear what we got.
how do you guys measure your social impact for your businesses and as well as the industry? I think that's a key performance indicator, basically, for the people who are going to buy your product. So how do you guys measure it, and how do you convey that to your customer base?
Very good. Let's take one more. Got one out there? Go ahead.
As a result of a pretty big tragedy in my life, I'm wanting to create something. I had lost my son to a car accident a couple of years ago. And I found great power in movement and food. And kind of like you, need mentors in this. And I feel like, what I want to do is so big, and it's a very, it's a subject that is hard for people and need, someone pretty strong to kind of muscle through the emotional part of what I'm wanting to do. So I don't know if that makes sense, if that's really a question, but I need a mentor too.
Appreciate you sharing. Yep. Panelists, take a crack at either of those.
Yeah, I can speak to that a little bit. I think
Could you repeat the question, Jen?
Yeah, absolutely. So the question was, I guess, how do you do it to some extent, right? And tell me if I'm getting this right, but if you're creating a business or something out of something that's really tough and really personal, what does that look like, especially if you feel like you're tackling what the design industry would call it a wicked problem, or these huge knots of problems? How do you even start, and how do you be tenacious enough to keep going? Would you say that's accurate? I feel like I'm trying to take on the fashion industry, and I'm one girl who doesn't really care that much about fashion, but cares about people. And so I think that for me, it's been what is that one next step that I can do, and how do I just get started and fail often and fail quickly, and then try something else and fail intentionally too. And by that, I think I mean I don't know if this is my chemistry background, but how do I run tiny little experiments, change a variable, see what worked, see what didn't, and then for whatever reason that feels less emotional to me. That feels a little bit more separate, because I'm now focusing on this experiment that I'm running, and then if I can keep trying it and keep tweaking it, then maybe I can get to the solution that I want. So I don't know if that kind of speaks to that. And then also speaking to your question about how do we measure impact, for us it's the cost of goods sold. So we're really specific about money that we, what we're paying artisans to make our products. I want that to increase as often as possible, and of course we have really specific measures. So we specifically kind of have this metric that, which is kind of crazy, but for every $100 for the cost of our inventory, we can employ an artisan and of course it's different in different developing countries, but in most developing countries for a month. And so we measure by months, and then we measure by years, and then we measure by kind of the longevity of our company. But I think it almost has to be that specific. This is what we say we care about. So if this number is not increasing, then we're not having a bigger impact.
For us, we're using the B Corp assessment. Being a B Corp for us, for our business and where we are, it's a great list for us to be held accountable to. And so there is a version of that that's online, that's free, open to the public, where you can go and kind of get a sense for the kinds of things that you can go through that are important to you. So for us, that's the measure. And then, the other thing I'd say is start collecting your customer stories. If you have a minimum viable product or a product in the industry, and you have a story from a customer that fits, and put those testimonials on your site, or share those, because that's really, people do business with people that they like. They do business with people that they, back to your question over here, there are people that would share your tragedy. And so you start small. A lot of times, and I had to learn this, is I got to be big. But you know what? The most successful companies start with your passion and just focusing on, finding your niche, and then just adding to that. Just add those people to your network that are your they sing your praises and they're your followers.
I guess I'll just remark on how we measure our impact. I'll tell you how we got to it also. We measure our impact based on participants reporting their level of improved confidence speaking the language and their improved understanding of the culture, which has been something that's been in progress because we're basically in the business of teaching cultural competency, which is really difficult to measure. And so we do self-reporting, but that wasn't how it started. I mean, we weren't even thinking about measuring our impact, actually. I mean, it started by trying to do this fun thing that we thought people would appreciate. It was learning from our participants who are friends, now at this point, learning from them what the experience was, what they actually got out of it. And we began to see this common theme of, oh, okay, well, they are more comfortable speaking the language now, and they're willing to go talk to the maybe person at H-E-B's butcher counter who maybe speaks another language and willing to actually, speak to them, whereas before they would have been a little hesitant and afraid to do that. So it's been a result of listening to our participants of what they get out of our programming, and that's how we're measuring our impact. But it's an evolution. I think that we'll probably be adding some measurables at some point in the future, but for now it's increased confidence learning the language and improved understanding of the culture they're studying.
So as an academic, I often respond to these questions structurally and thinking about not only how we're doing it individually, but what is the industry thinking about this and how are they thinking about this? And I would say that by and large that the impact investing and social entrepreneurship worlds haven't gotten this figured out any better than the foundation world in the world of philanthropy. The approaches that I've seen that have been coherent have been at large organizations that actually have the ability to invest all the way from inputs through to outcomes, and it's very expensive and very hard to do and very tough to find what is attributable to that organization. I think that one alternative approach to doing that, and it's not impact measurement, but it is at least a way of holding yourself accountable, is the B Corp approach, which is all of the people that we touch. What is our impact on all of those different stakeholders in our organization? I think that there are problems and there are benefits to both of those different approaches. The way that at UnLtd USA that we think about this is that we want to know from our organization what is the one thing that you want to see changed, and why, and then let's start tracking that. And then over time, as the organizations that we work with grow larger, then we would expect them to be more thorough and be more rigorous and be more complete about what it is that they're going to ultimately track. Part of that reflects the fact that at the very beginning stages, you don't actually know what you're doing. You don't know what your model looks like. What you're doing may change a couple of weeks from now, and so tracking impact is therefore infinitely more complex at the earliest of stages. So there's a number of caveats that sort of against the way that we approached it at UnLtd. And I think the thing that I heard from Jen, this idea of taking small steps, lines up with our approach pretty tightly. In that what we see is that when you're just beginning something, we have no idea whether or not the thing that we imagine is going to be the thing that the world receives, and so to begin to figure out how to take small steps that are affordable, that don't cost us a tremendous amount, but teach us a lot in the process. Those are steps that we can take to recruit people slowly along the path with us, and we can actually judge some of our success by whether or not we're able to recruit other people on side, whether or not we're able to convince this person to volunteer for us, convince this person to invest in us, convince this person to be our mentor, convince this person to supply their goods to our business. And so in a sense, it's that ability to build this, to slowly build this network of partners and this network of allies and advocates that is a way for us to tell whether or not the world's given us the feedback that yes, this is something the world is ready for. A couple more questions? Go ahead.
I guess I have kind of a comment more than a question. It just occurred to me, but the other night I guess I was watching CNN, and then all of a sudden, it said 20 minutes until CNN Heroes comes on, and I couldn't stop watching that. I mean, it's like, an hour. It was an award show, I guess, of all these different, people have had immense success doing incredible things. Talk about social entrepreneurship. That's the penultimate example. And and all that's available. I mean, if you talk about like having a mentor, they've been through it, they're incredibly successful. I'd say that's a great resource just to go on YouTube and listen to their story and how they got there. And I'm sure, just like all of you all, you're open to helping out people who are going down the same path. So just
Thanks. So Rod, for the recording, Rod was talking about CNN Heroes, which has picked up a few of these examples and tells their story pretty well. And then there are other national and international organizations like Ashoka and Skoll, the Skoll Foundation, and the Omidyar Network that are groups that fund a really large number of these types of organizations. So there are examples out there. So we got a couple more questions. And then, Jen, I think you may have opened up a Pandora's box here. I'm going to ask each of you all to take a failure bow with us, to actually share a moment in which things have gone totally sideways in a way that felt unrecoverable, and how you got out of that and who helped you. So let's take a couple more questions from the audience before we get there. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I have a evaluation and consulting company, and one of my goals is instead of just helping nonprofits with their program evaluations, I want to help social entrepreneurs also assess their social impact. And I want to know if you are aware of any resources or any groups that focus on that now as well, because I want to plug in more into that space. I've done research around social entrepreneurs, for-profit and nonprofit, who have created social value. And so I really want to get into how to help improve the effectiveness of these organizations and programs.
Great.
Somebody reached out to me about mentoring here locally here in Austin. His name is Brent. I forgot his last name. I have that information. He's trying to pair up mentors and mentees on any topic at all, whether it's something like your purses in Columbia or a social cause or something. And he's asking, and he puts together, I think they're quarterly local events. So if you want to give me your card, I can have you meet up with him.
Great. Have you guys seen folks that are doing impact evaluation in Austin yet?
Of like Ray Marshall Center, which is kind of ginormous. So I don't, but available to smaller companies, I don't know what those would be, but.
Sounds like your timing might be right.
Yeah.
I've had a couple of people ask this question in just the last 2 or 3 months, sort of as there's more energy and attention here. How are we actually going to make sure that the organizations that are getting this energy and attention are actually being held accountable in some way to the impact that they claim to want to have? I think it's important. So I think that there will probably be some competition down the road, but you may have the field pretty clear for now. Go ahead, Natalie.
My question is sort of a two-part one. So if as you declare yourself a socially responsible business, it seems like there's a potential for like kind of multiple social goods to emerge, where you may have started out with the purpose of, oh, I just want to focus on employment opportunities, but once you declare I'm a socially responsible business, then there's a lot more accountability or desire from the public to also see you be environmentally responsible or responsible in other ways. So I'm wondering if you all experienced that and how you dealt with it, and if you ever had those multiple social goods sort of in conflict with one another.
Yeah, I'm thinking. Sorry, I just had to. I was buffering for just a second. Whoa, that was a really good question. You have stumped the panel.
Casey said she's got it.
Oh, good, Casey. Please take it.
Well, I mean, so we are, our tool for teaching languages and sharing cultures is food, and so we get a lot of we're expected to also be very organic. Provide organic foods, and what's difficult about that is for some of the languages that we're teaching, we don't it's not available. Like, we can't get to organic foods, so that's been we have to explain that to some of our participants too. Like, we're whenever we can provide organic food, we do, but somehow it ends up being as if that's central to our organization. But so we have to really redirect and say, no, this is what our mission is really trying to reduce the cultural barriers. That's what we're focused on, not on sustainable foods, although we think that's important as well. So yes, I can say we've definitely experienced that, and we're working through how to handle it. Yeah.
Example that comes to my mind is not necessarily something that others have kind of said we should do. It's maybe more of an internal struggle. As a handbag company, and you kind of talked about this landfill like afterlife of products. For me, it's really tough to sell someone a handbag who doesn't need a handbag, which is also why I have people who do sales for me now, because I'm not great at it. So that's something that I really struggle with. If someone doesn't need something and shouldn't be spending the money, like I don't want them to purchase something that they don't need or they don't want. So it's kind of this kind of internal struggle. And then actually when we first started, knowing that we were going to be doing quite a bit of shipping and international shipping, I started looking into these carbon off-print, or what is it? Carbon footprint offsets. Thank you.
Yeah, no
Thank you. And kind of made that as an option whenever people would be shipping and they could choose to spend a few more dollars, and no one was interested. No one cared. No one cared if we used recycled boxes, and I feel like I went above and beyond to try to have less of an environmental impact and kind of realize like I have to focus on one thing, and I am a small business and can't afford to be spending money on these things right now. Once we kind of scale it, I'm interested in that because it's something I care about, but I was kind of surprised that my customers didn't care about it as much as I expected.
I'm still kind of buffering on that. But I think you make a good point. It is ask your customer, you know, what and then just hold to what your values are, I guess. That's what's most important, because that brings it back around to your passion and what you're doing, and that's kind of I'm still kind of buffering to put that in sort of our setting, but I think you guys have answered it really well. So.
And I'm going to get you guys, because we're running out of time here, I'm going to get you guys to hold on to your failure bows, and you can share them with folks if they come up and ask for you to share a time that things didn't go quite right. Let me, as we wind this down, I think that the things that I would hope for you all to walk away with is that these folks are pretty similar to who you are. Maybe they're a couple steps ahead. Maybe there's some of you out there that are a couple of steps ahead of them, but that their experiences are not very moved from you. And so if you're just getting started, I hope that this is a point of encouragement to you all, that there are actually other people here that are wrestling with some of these questions, that are trying to find these resources, and that these panelists are representative of another 250 organizations that we at UnLtd have interacted with over the course of the last 18 months that are trying to do the same. And so I hope that if nothing else, that those of you who are trying to figure out how to interact at this seam of making money and paying your bills, and then also having an impact on the world, know that you're a part of a larger tribe here in Austin that's trying to do so, and that's representative of a much larger movement around the world. And if we can be helpful to you all, I know that the panelists have offered their help and their connections and information, and that we would do the same at UnLtd USA. Come see us there, and at the RGK Center at the University of Texas as well. So unless there is something else, I'd like to thank the Economic Development Department for having us.
Yes, and if you ever need our services or need a networking session, give us your feedback on what would help you. But this was an awesome panel. I learned something I did not know. B Corp. My staff is going to kill me because my brain starts churning on things I want to do now for everybody. But again, this was wonderful. Thank you, thank you, thank you. Let's give our panelists a hand.
Hey, you guys. Do we have a winner for the shirt?
Somebody retweets somebody else in the next 5 minutes, they get a free shirt. There's been 0 retweets so far. So I'm going to leave this with Amy. And once somebody gets retweeted, you can come claim it.
And you can thank B Corp, yeah.